There was a man whose intelligence should have placed him among the great thinkers of his time. Instead, his name became one of the most feared in American history. He wasn't loud, he didn't demand attention, he didn't appear on television or give speeches. He lived alone in a small wooden cabin, hidden deep in the wilderness, with no electricity, no phone, and no connection to the modern world. And from that silence, he launched a campaign of terror that lasted nearly 2 decades. For 17 years, bombs arrived without warning. Universities, airlines, scientists, professors. There were no clear patterns, no obvious suspects, just fear and confusion. The person behind it all wasn't driven by money or revenge. He believed he was right. He believed society itself was the enemy. That belief is what makes this story unsettling. Because this is not the story of a man who lost control. It is the story of a man who believed he had found the truth and was willing to kill for it. His name was Ted Kaczynski, a mathematical genius, a former Harvard prodigy, a university professor, and eventually the FBI would call the Unabomber. This story is not about explosions. It's about isolation, about intelligence without connection, and about how a quiet, logical mind can become far more dangerous than a loud and reckless one.
Ted Kaczynski was born in 1942. From early childhood, it was clear he was different from the people around him. He was quiet, withdrawn, and intensely focused. Teachers quickly noticed that his intelligence was far beyond his age group. His IQ was exceptionally high, so high that he skipped multiple grades during school. Academically, Ted thrived. Socially, he struggled. While other children formed friendships and learned how to connect, Ted spent most of his time alone. He found comfort in books, numbers, and logic, things that didn't judge him or confuse him. As the years passed, his intelligence continued to grow, but his ability to connect with people did not. He felt misunderstood, detached, different. That sense of separation slowly hardened into something deeper. By the time he reached his teenage years, Ted wasn't just alone. He felt disconnected from society itself. He didn't relate to people the way others did. And that gap only widened as his intelligence set him further apart. At an age when most teenagers were still figuring out who they were, Ted was already operating on an academic level most adults never reach. That brilliance opened doors, but it also isolated him even further. And isolation, over time, would become the most important force in shaping who Ted Kaczynski would eventually become.
At just 16 years old, Ted Kaczynski entered Harvard University. He was one of the youngest students ever admitted. Surrounded by older classmates, far from home and emotionally unprepared, Ted became even more isolated. Harvard was supposed to be a place of growth. For Ted, it became a place of pressure. During his time there, Ted participated in a psychological experiment. This was not a simple academic study. Students were subjected to intense mental stress. Their beliefs were aggressively challenged, their confidence stripped away, and their reactions carefully observed. The goal was to break people down psychologically. Ted rarely spoke about this experience later in life, but investigators and psychologists believe it had a lasting impact on him. A mind that already felt out of place was now repeatedly challenged and humiliated. The sense of being attacked, misunderstood, and controlled began to take root. After Harvard, Ted continued his academic rise. He earned a PhD in mathematics and proved once again that his intelligence was extraordinary. But something had changed. He was no longer just isolated. He was resentful. The world no longer felt neutral to him. It felt hostile. And that shift from isolation to resentment would define everything that came next.
Ted Kaczynski's intelligence earned him a prestigious position at the University of California, Berkeley. He became the youngest professor in the university's history. From the outside, his life looked ideal. Academic respect, a stable career, a future filled with opportunity. But Ted hated it. He hated the noise of the city. He hated crowds. He hated what technology represented. He believed modern society was stripping humans of independence and purpose. Machines, corporations, and systems controlled people, and most didn't even realize it. To Ted, this wasn't progress. It was enslavement. The more he taught, the more disconnected he felt from the world around him. Eventually, without explanation, Ted resigned. No farewell, no discussion. He simply walked away. He rejected
society completely. Ted moved to the remote wilderness of Montana and built a small wooden cabin. There was no electricity, no running water, and no modern comfort of any kind. He wanted to live free from the system he despised. But isolation didn't bring peace. It gave his thoughts room to grow darker. In 1978, the first bomb was mailed. There was no warning, no manifesto, just an explosion that left confusion and fear behind. Then it happened again and again. Universities were targeted, airlines were targeted, scientists and professors became victims. The bombs were carefully constructed, no fingerprints, no obvious patterns. The FBI struggled to understand who was responsible. They named the unknown attacker Unabomb, short for University and Airline Bomber. For 17 years, Ted Kaczynski avoided capture. While the country lived in fear, Ted returned quietly to his cabin. He lived off the land, wrote obsessively, and planned his attacks with disturbing calm. In his mind, he was not a murderer. He was a messenger. He believed violence was necessary to force society to listen. Isolation had transformed intelligence into obsession. Logic replaced empathy, and belief replaced morality. Eventually, Ted made a mistake. He sent his manifesto to major newspapers and promised the bombings would stop if it was published. The newspapers agreed. That decision saved lives because someone recognized the writing. Ted's own brother. The language, the structure, the ideas, it all felt unmistakably familiar. He reported his suspicions to authorities. In 1996, the FBI raided the Montana cabin. Inside, they found bomb materials, journals, and overwhelming evidence. Ted Kaczynski was arrested and sentenced to life in prison. No dramatic ending, no apology, just silence. Ted Kaczynski was not born a monster. He was brilliant, isolated, and consumed by his beliefs. And sometimes, the most dangerous people are not loud or violent on the surface. Sometimes they are calm, logical, and completely convinced they are right.